you look at Star Wars and you have the story of Luke Skywalker, where Lucius is the sun walking across the sky, where he eventually meets his dark father, the Knight, right? The Dark Knight. And he battles his dark father through the hidden worlds and the hidden darkness and the hidden magic to vanquish his father, and he becomes the sun again, and his father becomes a light body or another sun. And so this is a really interesting, philosophy around Star Wars dealing with the five suns. But in alchemical symbols, alchemy, right? Chem, this comes from the word chem, or the land of chem. Chemistry, alchemy, chemotherapy. These are all words that come out of the Arabic, repronunciations of the old Suf language and Suf words of chem. And so when the Arabs took over Egypt in, I want to say it's like 30 or 40 AD, everything kind of reverted back to the elder languages, and this is where we get some of these words in our mathematics, and a lot of influence going around the world with some of the older philosophies. But you were talking about Bernie. You were talking about this place in Alberta pointing to Peru, pointing to Egypt. So in Ptolemaic times, around 300 BC, there was an admiral of the sea that came out of ancient Chem. His name was Maui, and he sailed through the Red Sea and into the Indian Ocean, and he circled New Zealand, and he planted his flag there, basically, and then he crossed through the currents through Tonga all the way through Easter Island into like Santiago de Chile, and getting back into the currents or sailing up the coast of Chile into Peru. He then got back into the water stream, and it took him to Hawaii through that whole area. And there's probably an instance of him going from Hawaii all the way up into Alaska. And we know this through the paddles and the totem and carvings and the paddles and the totem poles that match all the way from Alaska through Hawaii, through most of Polynesia into New Zealand. And the New Zealanders talk about Maui coming there. What's interesting is this character becomes Maui, this admiral of the sea who is a god to the Polynesians, because all of a sudden he's uniting all these different island groups and bringing, allowing new trade routes and whatnot.
How did they spell it when it's Maui?
Mawi or Maui II, yeah.
Which one is this Maui?
Maui. What's that?
Which Maui is this one?
Oh, this is where the legend of Maui comes from, and so when you watch, yeah, he was an Egyptian, or I guess that would be Ptolemaic. Yeah, he was an Egyptian.
Amazing, and
admiral,
that you also
Greco-Egyptian admiral. Yeah,
and in Hawaii and like Easter Island and New Zealand, they have their different Maui and Maui statues.
It's all the same character. Yeah, they think of him as a god, but he was a real flesh and blood person. And when you go to Egypt, or when you go to Peru and you go into the Larco Lima museum, the gold museum, you go down to the basement, and in the back there are these 3 different headdresses that are they're like these 2 spikes that go up. One is totally solid, and the other 2 have texture, and they've been broken. And they're these headbands, and then they also have these chest plates, and basically. On the inscription, it says Inca burial, or Inca ceremonial burial garb, solid gold. And you look at it and you're like, this is straight out of ancient Chem. This is the headdress of Amun. There's no way around it. It's so obvious. So anyway, you can find some of the stuff on my site, Megamist. But yeah, no, okay. I was wondering what you're talking about with this.
So up here, I have a couple of the different Alberta Badland Guardian geoglyph sites. So these are the different faces. The straight line up in the circle spot there that would have this guy dubbed as the iPod Indian when it trended originally.
I was about to say, that's the
that's an access road and an oil derrick, and it's in the perfect center spot for where this guy's earlobe would be. To the bottom left, the depiction figure of the indigenous native peoples of Alberta, southern Alberta, where I live and where this location is. But above him appears to be a smaller additional head that both works into part of the bigger headdress that this guy is covered in, but also smaller, its own what appears to be potentially like a Viking or some other identity person group and crown on it. And then on the opposite side, on the top right now, facing east instead of west, and what makes up the plume or the giant feather going off of this headdress also makes up a separate face of the Olmec or Toltec different figures of that area, of this overall area, and the figures within it. And this being another one which has been called the feathered headdress, got Incan or Mayan figure also in the Alberta Badlands. Geoglyphs.
Is this like outside of Red Deer somewhere up there?
No, Medicinehat, Alberta. This is right outside.
Okay, yeah, gotcha.
And so here's a couple of the overall sites and faces, and then the numbers are where the earthenworks are of the actual radial geoglyphs that point out and calculate and add up to the lengths and angles that then plot to the other different locations, including to the Peru Nazca site, as well as the Egyptian Giza pyramids, as well as the Bosnian pyramid sites, all each being in these sites here in Alberta, as well as in Peru, as well as in Bosnia, as well as in Egypt, all tying to each other. And also at this site is what I believe to be this one, which is the Maui, or the essentially this guy being the bird head, or the long head, long nose Easter Island figure on the lighter white side.
Oh, the Moai, right.
The Moai, right, exactly. And then on the opposite side in the dark, you have what appears to be one of the big faces of either Hawaii or Micronesia's or New Zealand, with the big eyebrows, the big long block nose, the what seems to be like the coconut chin and whatnot down here, also essentially called Moai or Mui, something like that, on the different cultures. And you can see long-nosed birdman up at the very top west, northwest, or left of the page here. And then, sorry, I did not actually make this image or label them. This person claiming the Quetzalcoatl or feathered serpent headdress of the Aztec Mayan guy, alien head guy. But the point being that no matter who you are, just any random person is going to distinguish that each of these are actually figures with
Skeksis.
And immediately across from it also being another elongated head figure. This past summer, these were the two specific spots and features that I explored on the ground, and found every single hill and surface face of the inclines of these structures completely covered in all of those parallel terraces in them, just like we find in the Peruvian geoglyph sites as well. And then you see another face up here, a potential other one down here, and then the main Badland Guardian guy here with the potential Olmec guy here, and that there is also this additional face right here of another what seems to be potentially Olmec, Aztec, Mayan, or indigenous of the Americas person. And that's at least 10 or 8 to 10 different figures and sites there, all, this is macro-sized macro structures that you're seeing from above, from space or satellite, essentially, and that is actually only half of the overall site. I need to do a new episode and get Google Maps working, because I've found and seen that there's actually an additional whole other valley and set of these macro faces and glyphs in the next set of hills and valleys to the north of this, and several other indigenous warrior figures above. So there's potentially like 20 or 30 of this site, which is absolutely huge, and connects in with Nazca.
I need to go back down to Peru. I love that place. Very beautiful.
We need to join you there.
I was saddened, though, that it was hard to find a lot of potato or quinoa in the local restaurants, because a lot of it is exported for us Western people. It's like that's their national product, but they have like 20, 30 varieties of corn that all grow at different altitudes. I mean, they were masters of terracing, speaking of terracing. Masters.
Right? Like you get the purple corn, the yellow corn, the white corn, the different mazes, the different, like it's the...
So, when they would trade, you've got to think they were seed bankers and traders. I mean, that was their profession. People would come to them and they'd be like, all right, we've got these potatoes. What elevation do you live at? Where, what is the climate of where you live? And so then they would sort out, and discover exactly the seeds or what they needed for those elevations and those climates. And that was how they would trade. I mean, why else would you, grow food in essence at every elevation that you can, unless you were, experimenting scientifically, for sure. But that also has a huge trade value. I mean, that's like gold in a sense. Where do you live? How can we provide you the right food that you need for where you live? And what can you give us?
Another aspect of it, I believe, and it's shown, and we're starting to also experiment with, is the electroculture aspects of it, the pyramid power aspects of it, and how it all ties in, and why they had them on these different terraces, which would then, be structured into the pyramid energy and the flows of the energy that they're working with and utilizing too.
So when I went to Tipon is Moras or Tipon, I think it was Tipon, is where they have the water terraces that feed all these different ladaks basically. And myself and one other guy decided we got some time. Everybody's moping around there all in slow motion with high altitude sickness. So we jumped the fence and we ran all halfway up the hill to where the water comes out of the top of the hill and comes down this channel. And every 30, 40 feet was another paddock that the water would flow into and mix. And so we thought this is where they were seeding stuff like rice or corn or other things. And then that would overflow into these other terraced areas. But the main waterway was where the water would come down into. And so it would come down into that and then flow into the terraces. But all the way up the hill were these paddocks, in case maybe if they had too much overflow, they could, flush it off or do something. But it seemed like these were seeding grounds for higher altitude stuff. So really fascinating.
It was, and you said that was in Peru, correct? Or?
Yeah, so there's Tipon and there's Moras, and I'm trying to should look up which one is which. Tipon, Tipon.
So people chew on the cocoa leaves to help them with the elevation.
Oh yeah, that's what you have to do. You can buy coca tea. I would do that. I'd put it in my hydro flask every morning in the hotel. And then I'd add my Bengal spice or something to it to give it a little bit of flavor. Or you buy little bags of cocoa leaf and you chew on them. And Brian suggested that the second we got off the plane in Cusco, he's like, you're going to want to buy a bag, or if you have high altitude sickness pills, take them. because Cusco's at like 13,000 feet. I mean, that's no joke.
Man, you're gonna want to buy a bag of that cocoa leaf.
Kathmandu's at 4,700 feet. Cusco's at 13,000 feet. So.
Did it bother you?
For record,
so I drank the tea and I chewed the cocoa. I didn't really have any issue. I actually had a lot of energy. And
did your face get flush?
It was because I grew up in Nepal, and so I was at elevation,
acclimatized to high mountain environments, atmosphere. Right?
But I was saddened because 90% of the people on the tour were popping, the altitude sickness pills like nobody's business, and they were sick the entire time. It was kind of crazy. So, natural root, chemical
that
root
made them sick. Strange. And just wanted to point out or interject that Coca-Cola soda pop used to actually be that coca leaf tea that you get
and sugar.
Yeah, right. And carbonation pop form is what it used to be, but no mo. Now it'll clean your toilet bowl.
So at the movie theaters, when they have the hot dog rotator, at the end of the night, they take those greasy, nasty, cheesy filled hot dogs off of the hot dog rotator. They clean that with the Coca-Cola out of the dispenser because it will strip that thing down like nobody's business. So what does that do to your stomach? Yeah. If you take a piece of beef and you put it in a glass of Coca-Cola, I had to do this for a science project in like middle school. That beef will eat through that Coca-Cola, or the Coca-Cola will eat through the beef like nobody's business. Same with teeth. If you take your teeth and you put them in a glass of Coca-Cola, your teeth will turn into like mush at the bottom within 24 hours. So what does this do to your stomach?
That is no lie. That's literally why, like, a couple of times in my life, I had passed out without brushing my teeth after like drinking soda pop. And literally in the morning, I wake up with like ridiculous pains and like a chunk of my tooth falling off, and like a day away from my next dentist appointment and cavity freaking fill. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's the truth. I mean, same with vinegar. You put a raw egg in its shell in a jar of vinegar, and the vinegar will eat away the calcium in the shell and turn it into rubber. And you can take out the egg and throw it against walls, and it'll bounce off and bounce down the door because it's now rubberized from the vinegar. Oh, these crazy science projects. I'm sure some of you guys did this stuff early.
Real science. Oh, and it's exactly what I'm doing. In alchemy, trying to make the metamaterials, transmute it into that perfect material or crystal.
Well, that's our purpose, right? We're all here to polish our crystals, our diamonds, and sometimes we get it in one go, and sometimes we come back a few times and have to take off some more dirt.
Right. And what a good show today. We have about 20 minutes left, so guys want to go in one more time, maybe Hans, a bit more of your new book, and then we'll finish it off, Julia, with the last bit of your remote viewing session and what we got coming up next.
So my new book, it's called The Magic of Symbols. It's an introductory dive into basically symbology throughout time. So I start out with kind of the history of where symbols started in the old times to represent a concept, an idea, an object, a status. These all end up in what our symbology is today. Everybody asks, what is a symbol? Well, you're taking a very complex concept and you're conforming it into a visual that can be understood. We often hear the phrase, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Well, a symbol is worth 100 words. And so it compresses it down even more. I start off, with a little bit of history of symbols, starting with some of the stuff we see in the Lascaux caves, going to reliefs from Göbekli Tepe, into Egyptian or Cometian symbology and even Sumerian symbology. And then,